When soldiers faced the relentless mechanized warfare of World War I, medicine was pushed into a crisis unlike anything it had ever experienced before. This was a world without antibiotics, without advanced pain control, and without modern trauma care. Constant artillery bombardments, machine gun fire, razor-sharp shrapnel, corrosive chemical weapons, and horrific burns produced injuries on an unimaginable scale. Doctors were suddenly overwhelmed by the sheer number and severity of wounded men arriving from the front lines every single day. Yet out of this devastation, modern plastic surgery and prosthetics were born. Returning soldiers were often physically and psychologically shattered. Many became known as the broken faces. It is estimated that nearly 40% of French soldiers were rendered disabled during the war, and around 14% of the wounded suffered severe facial disfigurement. Photographs from the era show veterans being pushed in wheelchairs, hobbling on crude prosthetic limbs, or tapping their way forward with white canes. Some men had lost arms or legs, others had lost their sight. But for those whose faces had been destroyed, the suffering was often even worse. While amputees could sometimes hide their injuries beneath clothing, facial wounds could not be concealed. Missing noses, jaws, mouths, and ears marked these men permanently. Many referred to themselves as broken gargoyles, unable to recognize the person staring back at them in the mirror. For many, the trauma did not end with survival. Some withdrew completely from society, abandoning jobs, families, and even their own homes. Eating often required tubes or spoons. Speaking became difficult or impossible. The war followed them long after the guns fell silent. Attempts to replace lost body parts were not new. As far back as ancient Egypt, crude prosthetic toes and limbs had existed. Over centuries, surgeons slowly learned the importance of hygiene and clean wounds, improving survival rates. By the early 20th century, medicine had advanced enough to save lives that would once have been lost. But survival created a new question. What kind of life awaited these men afterward? World War I introduced industrialized warfare on a massive scale. Millions were killed and tens of millions were wounded. Doctors who had once treated simple gunshot and bayonet injuries now faced catastrophic wounds caused by explosives designed to tear human bodies apart. Trench warfare made facial injuries especially common. Soldiers' lower bodies were protected by trench walls, but their heads and faces were exposed. Shrapnel and bullets struck eyes, jaws, and noses with devastating effect. Early treatments were brutal and ineffective. Surgeons attempted to stitch torn skin together, destroying natural facial structure. Eyes were misplaced, jaws collapsed, noses disappeared entirely. Survivors awoke from surgery only to see a face that no longer resembled their own. Then one man decided this was not acceptable. Harold Gillies, a surgeon from New Zealand, witnessed these injuries firsthand and refused to accept permanent disfigurement as the inevitable outcome. In Britain, he established a specialized unit dedicated entirely to facial reconstruction. This unit eventually became Queen's Hospital, where groundbreaking techniques were developed. Gillies pioneered the use of the pedicle flap, a revolutionary method that involved transferring healthy skin from one part of the body to the damaged face while keeping the skin connected to its original blood supply. This dramatically increased the chances of survival and healing. The process was long, painful, and required multiple surgeries over many months. But for the first time, soldiers were given a chance to regain both function and a recognizable appearance. At the same time, prosthetic limbs underwent a transformation. Before the war, prosthetics were expensive, rare, and mostly cosmetic. They were designed to look acceptable, not to function. World War I changed that necessity overnight. Italian orthopedic doctor Giuliano Vangetti proposed using remaining muscles in an amputated limb to control prosthetics. His idea allowed amputees to move artificial limbs using their own muscle contractions. This concept was later refined by German surgeon Ferdinand Sauerbruch, making prosthetics far more functional and practical. These developments restored a degree of independence to thousands of wounded men. But for those with facial injuries, another solution emerged: masks. British sculptor Francis Derwent-Wood realised his artistic skills could help disfigured soldiers. He began creating thin metal masks made of tin or copper. Each mask started with a plaster cast of the soldier's face. Missing features were carefully sculpted, then painted to match skin tone. The masks were often attached using glasses and sometimes included real human hair for eyebrows or moustaches. American sculptor Anna Coleman Ladd later refined the process in Paris, creating even more realistic designs. Despite these efforts, demand far exceeded supply. Around 20,000 soldiers never received masks at all. At first, these men were viewed as heroes, living symbols of sacrifice. But as the war faded into memory, their faces became reminders people wanted to forget. Many were pushed out of public life, struggling to find work, partners, or acceptance. They survived the war, only to face isolation afterward. World War I permanently reshaped medicine. The urgent need to treat unprecedented injuries accelerated advances in plastic surgery, prosthetics, and rehabilitation. By the time World War II began, antibiotics and improved techniques dramatically increased survival and recovery rates. But these advances came at an unimaginable human cost. The men who endured these injuries deserve to be remembered, not only for their bravery on the battlefield, but for the lifelong battles they fought afterward. Their sacrifice did not end when the war ended. For many, the war never truly ended at all.